Good evening. Everybody got quiet. I guess we can start. Glad you're here tonight. It was Wednesday night. Beautiful day. Hope everything's going well with you. Good day to be here. Continue tonight in the book of Judges. Wasn't able to be here last week, and Don Blackwell stepped in and filled in for me. I appreciate Don doing that. But good videos he has, a lot of them, and good information that we can learn from. Many of them he has developed over the years. We'll begin the word of prayer, and Joe McNeese, would you lead some prayer? We're in Judges 19. This is a two-part story. We'll cover the first part tonight, and next Wednesday we'll cover the second part. And it's quite a story that takes place. It's after Joshua. It's before King Saul, in that range there, because the tribes have received their land inheritance. They're divided up, and that's sort of how we know about where the time frame is. But in verse 1 and 2, and it came to pass in those days, when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite staying in the remote mountains of Ephraim. He took for himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judea. But his concubine played the harlot against him, and he went away from him to her father's house in Bethlehem in Judea, and was there 4 whole months. So here's a man. He has a concubine, which is a pretty common thing during this time. A secondary wife. She could not inherit anything. When he dies, what she has is what she has. If she had been his true wife, then she would get what he would left behind. But she betrays him. She becomes a harlot, and probably things are pretty rough in the household. And she goes to her father's house, and there she stays for a period of 4 months. She is there. Then in verse 3, then her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back, having his servant and a couple of donkeys with him. So she brought him into her father's house. And when the father of the young woman saw him, he was glad to meet him. So the father-in-law, I guess his son-in-law, they're talking in good terms. They have made a reconciliation between the husband and the wife. And the father-in-law is glad that has happened, taking place. It's just everything seems to be working out. Everything's good. In verse 4, now his father-in-law, the young woman's father, detained him, and he stayed with him 3 days. So they ate and drank and lodged there. So 3 days he stays with them. The son-in-law does. His wife, the father's daughter, 3 days. They're just enjoying each other's company. Of course, you know what they say, 3 days. After 3 days, fish and family begin to stink, hanging around each other. Well, it's time for the husband and the wife to go back home. Verse 5 and 6. Then it came to pass on the 4th day that they arose early in the morning, and he stood to depart, but the young woman's father said to his son-in-law, refresh your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go your way. So they sat down, and the two of them ate and drank together. Then the young woman's father said to the man, please be content to stay all night. Let your heart be merry. So the young man was ready to go home. But the father-in-law wanted to keep him there. Doesn't want to get rid of his daughter. He's rather the son-in-law and the daughter maybe just stay right there. Maybe he can convince them of this. So they stay a fourth night. Verse 8, got the next morning. Then he arose early in the morning on the fifth day to depart. But the young woman's father said, "Please refresh your heart." So they delayed until the afternoon, and both of them ate. A lot of eating going on. But yet, I guess that's what you do. You get hungry. He's ready to go home. The father-in-law convinces him half a day. Okay, we'll stay a half a day, but we got to go after that. Verse 9. And when the man stood to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law and the young woman's father said to him, "Look, the day is now drawing toward evening. Please spend the night. See, the day is coming to an end. Lodge here that your heart may be merry. Tomorrow go your way early so that you may get home." So again, it's getting late. Everybody's convinced here, spend the night. You don't want to travel at night. It's dangerous to travel at night. So just spend the night instead of starting here midday and wind up somewhere. But in verse 10, however, the man was not willing to spend the night. So he rose and departed and came to opposite Jebus, that is Jerusalem. With him were the 2 saddled donkeys. His concubine was also with him. So they leave. And that's enough. The husband, he's ready to get back home. They leave. Verse 11. They were near Jebus, and the day was far spent. And the servant said to his master, "Come, please, let us turn aside into the city of the Jebusites and lodge in it." But his master said to him, "We will not turn aside into a city of foreigners who are not of the children of Israel. We will go on to Gibeah. So it's dark. Wish we could stay here at these Jebusites, but he won't have it. They're not our people. He doesn't trust them, I guess. Not our people. I'd rather be with my people. So the Gibeah there, that's a city in Benjamin, of the tribe of Benjamin. That's what the city is. So we'll go there. It's not far. We'll go on and travel there. Verse 15. They turned aside there to go into lodge at Gibeah. And when he went in, he sat down in the open square of the city, for no one would take them into his house to spend the night. So they get to Gibeah. There's nowhere to stay. Just this open square. Right in the middle of the town. You would think everything would be all right there. So he decides, we'll just stay here. We'll camp out here in the middle of the city. But he's warned against this. Verse 16, 17. Just then an old man came in from his work in the field at evening, who also was from the mountains of Ephraim. He was staying in Gibeah, whereas the men of the place were Benjamites. And when he raised his eyes, he saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said, "Where are you going? And where do you come from?" So the old man, he just has interest. And here's a young man not really knowing where he's at, what the situation is. The old man just asking some questions. 18 and 19. So he said to him, "We are passing through Bethlehem in Judea toward the remote mountains of Ephraim. I am from there. I went to Bethlehem in Judea. Now I'm going to the house of the Lord, but there is no one who will take me into his house. Although we have both straw and fodder for our donkeys, and bread and wine for myself, for your female servant, and for the young man who is with your servant, there is no lack of anything. Why don't anybody take him in? Customary that you would do this. He's not going to be a burden to anybody. He's got plenty of feed for the animals. He's got plenty of food for himself and servants and his wife there. Won't be a trouble, but nobody wants to do that. Nobody will take him in. 20 and 21. And the old man said, peace be with you. However, let all your needs be my responsibility. Only do not spend the night in open square. So he brought him into his house and gave fodder to the donkeys, and they washed their feet and ate and drank. So the old man invites him to stay with him. Won't be a problem whatsoever. I'll be responsible for you. So he does. Verse 22. As they were enjoying themselves, suddenly certain men of the city, perverted men, surrounded the house and beat on the door. They spoke to the master of the house, the old man, saying, bring out the man who came to your house, that we may know him carnally. So this is not good. The house is surrounded, pretty much. Perverted men, they know the stranger's there. They want to know him sexually. That's what they're wanting, carnally or sexually. And now we see why this older man did not want him to stay in the court square. He knew that things will not go well. So maybe I get him to my house and I can protect him. I can leave him alone. People leave him alone. 23. But the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, no, my brethren, I beg you, do not act so wickedly, seeing this man has come into my house, and do not commit this outrage. So he pleads with them, trying to protect this man, but they're not listening to what he has to say. Have nothing to do with him. Then verse 24. Look, here is my virgin daughter and the man's concubine. Let me bring them out now. Humble them and do with them as you please, but to this man do not do such a vile thing. Now this is hard to understand. Why a man would, knowing the situation, knowing what was outside his doors, how he would take his daughter and give to this mob, how he would take the concubine that's with the man that was in the room with him and give her to the mob as well. Hard to understand how a father could do this, do what he did. There's a similar situation, you remember, when the angels came to Lot in the Sodom and Gomorrah. And they came to the door and wanted of the two angels that were there. And Lot offered to them, the mob, his daughters. But God took care of that situation and blinded all the mob that was outside. But it doesn't make sense how this could be, but it happened. Then, verse 25, but the man would not heed him. So the man took his concubine and brought her out to them. And they knew her and abused her all night until morning. And when the day began to break, they let her go. So they refuse the offer from the old man, but yet they do take the man's concubine. They don't take the man's daughter. They take the man's concubine. I don't know why they would turn down the daughter and take the wife, but they did, for whatever reason. The word there, so the man took, that the Hebrew word has a strong meaning. They had to force this lady to go out. At least the man, the husband, had to force his wife to go out. She did not want to go. You can't blame her. He forced her, maybe pushed her out the door against her will. And of course, says something about his love for her. You would think to travel after her, to go get her, and then to bring her back, he would have a greater love for her than to push her out the door. But he did. He cherished his own life more than that of the concubine. 26, daylight comes. Then a woman came as the day was dawning, and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was till it was light. When her master arose in the morning and opened the doors of the house and went out to go his way, there was his concubine fallen at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. Well, she made it back to the house, made it to the door, but she dies. She dies in the process of trying to get back there. And here the husband finds her. Has to be I wonder, what did he think was going on all night? Did he think about her at all? What was taking place? I don't know. I know. That's something. How could he sleep knowing what was taking place? I wonder, I don't know if it was the attitude of the disrespect for a woman or nothing. I don't know. Verse 28. And he said to her, "Get up and let us be going." But there was no answer. So the man lifted her onto the donkey, and the man got up and went to his place. So she's dead. She didn't survive this. And he's going to take her now, take her back home with him. Puts her on the donkey, and they go. Think right here for a moment. If this lady, this concubine, had not done what she did, had not become a harlot, and then go to her father's, you wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have this story at all. Sometimes the consequences of sin, they show up at a later date. And I'm not saying that what this crowd or mob did was right, by no means. But I'm not saying it's her fault. It's just sometimes consequences of sin have a way of getting on us and hurting us. Yeah. Yeah. That's next week. Depravity. But it gets worse. Here in verse 29. When he entered his house, he took a knife and laid hold of his concubine and divided her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. Pretty rough. Takes his wife, concubine, cuts her up, and sends each piece to one of the 12 nations, 12 tribes. Even the tribe of Benjamin, I'm sure. That's where she was when she was murdered. But he's reaching out for the support of these other nations that are around the 12 tribes of Israel. He's wanting to show them, tell them, here's what our brethren did to my wife, my concubine. What do you mean? I know. Yeah, put the blame on them. So he's getting support. We're going to have to teach them a lesson. This Benjamin group, tribe. And pretty much I think if they do not help, the same fate may come to them. May come to them. Verse 30. And so it was that all who saw it said, no such deed has been done or seen from the day that the children of Israel came up from the land of Egypt until this day. Consider it, confer, and speak up. So he's in disgust here. This has never happened before. And we got to remember, during this time, right here, there's no organized government, nothing like that. Israel doesn't have a king. Everybody was doing what was right in their own eyes. And Israel, at least the 11 other tribes, are coming together, and they're going to decide how Benjamin is going to be punished. What are we going to do about this? We can't let it go unpunished, because it's going to get worse if you don't take care of this evil. So you can't just ignore it. Sin has to be dealt with. Chapter 20, verse 1 and 2. So all the children of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, as well as from the land of Gilead. And congregation gathered together as one man before the Lord at Mizpah. And the leaders of all the people, all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves to the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. So they're all in agreement. Something's got to be done. They're going to assemble their armies together, 400,000 of them, and they're fixing to do something. They're fixing to go to Benjamin, take care of them. In verse 3, now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. Then the children of Israel said, tell us, how did this wicked deed happen? So Benjamin has heard about they're assembled. And they haven't really invited us. Something's going on. So as they're all there, these leaders from these 11 other nations, they want to hear again what has happened. 4 and 5, he tells them. So the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, my concubine and I went into Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin, to spend the night. And the men of Gibeah rose against me, surrounded the house at night because of me. They intended to kill me, but instead they ravished my concubine so that she died. He didn't tell them. He pushed her out the door. He didn't tell them that. He just said they took her. I guess that would be an important detail, I would think, to be included in this, but he didn't include that part. Verse 6 and 7. So I took hold of my concubine, cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout all the territory of the inheritance of Israel, because they committed lewdness and outrage in Israel. Look, all of you are children of Israel. Give your advice and counsel here and now. So he's wanting to know, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do? He told the story. And of course, you can read ahead if you want to. But next week, we're going to look at part 2. See what happens. What kind of punishment did the 11 tribes give to the tribe of Benjamin? Pretty gruesome story. These are God's people. And look how deranged they have become, how sinful they have become, and how they would treat others. Any other comment on the part 1 of the story? Sorry? I guess. It's not mentioned. I wonder if he has a wife, a true wife. I don't know. Can you have a concubine and not have a wife? I guess you could. If she is at home, if the wife is there and she hears of this, she's probably thinking, I'm not going to go anywhere with them. Who knows what will come of this? He'll throw me out the door or under the bus, as we say today. All right, a couple of minutes early, but we'll end here and take up part 2 next week.